We hope.
Usually have it. You could. What's the name of the chicken coop? They're right upstairs.
Okay, live on YouTube. We know the noise is working. Video is working. Okay. We are the only participants. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is roll call. Greg Leggett,
Here.
Michael Biddle,
Yes.
Brian Campbell, no. Mike Wild, no. Dave O'Brien's here. Visitors are Mary King, Mike Grasso,
And
Uncle Nick.
I already got you marked,
you didn't say that.
but I already took care of that. When you walked in, I marked you down.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We have Kara's here, Lester and Bruce are not here. All right. First, I expected Bob Holmes here.
Is that for the delineation, Chairman?
Yeah.
Do you want me to try calling him?
Would you please?
Is that it?
Yep. Should have his cell phone number too, I think.
I'll see.
Thanks, but we hear enough of that.
Not the thing.
Go ahead, Nick. Little Dean Martin.
Come to me, my melon-headed baby.
Geez, I'm gonna have to leave. I can't take this. All right, first order of business. There was no minutes in June, because June or July. So we need an approval of the June 2nd, 2021 minutes for the executive part meeting.
Yes, sir. So moved.
Biddle. And do I have a second?
Like it.
Leggett. Okay, any omissions or corrections?
I tried Mr. Holmes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Old business, TDI update. TDI update, CHPD. Continuing ongoing, we have 10 of the parties who had needed to approve the resolution for the splitting the money have approved it. 5 more, 3 are going this week. No, 4 going next week and 1, I'm not sure what their meeting date is. I got to check with them. So that's going forward. We come to form a resolution on our terms. That's been set out. Mr. Scott hopefully is working on the agreements. And hopefully we can bring this to a resolution on August 17th, 16th. Hopefully have a resolution by then, so we'll be in line with it to approve that.
And will that resolution be to us?
The resolution be for us to resolve them.
Do you want Mr. Holmes? I have him on the phone to log into the Zoom or to be on my cell?
Probably log into Zoom, but I really want to go over all these maps. Okay. If you can log into Zoom, then log into
If you could
Zoom.
log into Zoom, that'd be great. Do you have the address, sir? Thank you, Bob. No problem.
Okay. TDI update, so that's going fairly well.
And just for clarification, these 15, those are schools and municipalities.
Schools, municipalities, schools, towns, villages, and county.
Okay.
So most of them all approved. UTAP policy, Mike's working on that. I'd like to set a meeting of the group, the subcommittee, so we can work on that. We got some recommendations to do. put in place before we come to the board. So hopefully he's on vacation next week, the week after, we'll do that. Okay. No. Need to get rid of that bar at the bottom because you can't see when participants log in. There. Okay. Follow litigation has been filed. People saw it, I think people saw it in the paper.
Yeah.
It's amazing how people can read things and not get it 100% accurate, but that's okay. I shouldn't have said that. So again, we're not talking about litigation. Any questions, refer them to our attorneys or me. Okay.
Oh, there's Mr. Holmes.
Good morning. My apologies.
Okay. Let's go back to the potential project updates. Nolan Properties, the planning board didn't meet with them last month. There was some late documentation that was requested. Unfortunately, didn't get there in time to get to the planning board in terms of that. So, got his title work done, title search all done.
It's in process.
Oh, I thought he said it. I
No,
thought Gene said he.
I haven't
I
received it
thought
yet.
Bob said he had it done.
They had ordered it
Robert.
as far as I didn't get it yet.
Okay. Okay. So we have a couple more interest people down there. We're working on those. We'll see what happens with them. I talked to Kilcoyne Farms. They're meeting with their investors. They had a couple of good conversations with a couple of investors, so they're waiting on that and moving forward on that. So that's about all I have on that. Any other questions on that? Okay.
I guess any timeline with Cocoin? Are they hopeful?
Whenever we get their investors, that's what we're waiting for.
Working with MBT Bank.
Yeah. Litigation update is one thing I really want to talk about today. Bob,
Yes.
I'd like to go through, I actually pulled out the email and talked about the things we needed to look at.
Yes.
And lead this conversation. There's some areas we talked about doing some things with. I think we ought to start making some decisions on those. So if you could take over here, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Just bear with me just a second. I'm pulling up that email that I did share with you last week, Dave. The question we had, and this comes back to follow up from the July 1st meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers and NCES with regards to delineations, things of that nature. That the question comes down to now is, does the IDA have any desire to, in essence, reclaim a couple of the lots, provide crossings over where there is newly delineated wetlands to wetland or to upland that is located to the north? I'm speaking specifically on lots 30 and 31 right now. And the other lot where I mentioned as far as reclaiming is lot 4, and that's the corner of Casey Road and County Line Road. As far as filling on lot 4, that would require mitigation elsewhere on the property in which we would have to create newly constructed wetlands. That does take a longer process, and one of the responses that we had from from NCES, Stephen George, is that would take more time as far as being able to finalize a permit. Because instead of falling under a general permit, we would be in the position of having to follow an individual permit process, which can take some additional time.
So looking at the map, if I look at four, I mean, there's not much upland property there.
Correct.
I would think the better approach is combine 4 and 5.
Correct. That was certainly a discussion that we had before, Dave, but it did not seem like that was the definitive determination or plan as far as the committee goes. So that would certainly be the easier process to go, is basically market 4 and 5 as a single lot. And that would certainly speed up the process as far as compliance and getting things up to speed with regards to the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay. I mean, that'd be my recommendation. You get bigger lot. The depth isn't as great back there in 5, so I would prefer just combine 4 and 5 and market as one property.
Okay, and then obviously on lot 5, there is a small area right up near Casey Road that would have to be a preserved area. Let me ask this question: if we were to look elsewhere on the property, if there's a strong desire to fill something along those lines, that would also trigger this individual permit. That if the IDA decided to go look elsewhere, that you may, if you were to look elsewhere to fill, you may wish to fill everything at once because you already triggered an individual permit. But Dave, if I'm reading between the lines thus far, as you may be leaning away from that.
At this point, I think there's a conversation to be had on some of the rest of it, but 4 and 5 are the ones that, can we have one conversation, please? 4 and 5 to combine, so 4 and 5 is one, that reduces it, even if you found some fill area in other places.
Correct. Then the next item I mentioned, lots 30 and 31, as far as providing a crossing to the upland area, that's right at the north, that's right at the bend in Ferguson Lane, 30 and 31. That we've got some narrow sections of wetland through there that we could provide a full crossing to span that width. And if we provided a full crossing to span that width without disturbing the wetland, that would not trigger a mitigation requirement to construct wetlands elsewhere.
Okay, so that would open up both lots 30 and 31?
It would make the upland areas to the north of those wetlands available, or I should say accessible for development.
But
if we provided a crossing.
But if I look at the shaded area on 30 and 31, there's still quite a bit of new wetlands there, isn't there?
That is correct.
So realistically, usable space, that's again in the same place. We'd probably be looking at marketing 30 and 31 together.
That's certainly conceivable and probably might be recommended.
Okay. Okay. So let's first is do 4 and 5 together. Actually 30 and 31 together. Okay. What else was there we had to talk about?
The next item on there, since the full board meeting, we have had correspondence back from John Connell, which he had some comments with regards to the deed restriction language. Kara, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to review his comments in that regard.
Yeah, I did take a look at his changes. I'm not really surprised with them. They pulled back in information. They pulled back in language regarding the meets and bounds descriptions. we talked about that at the last full board meeting, that they're gonna require that, so that wasn't a surprise. But I think that that is the only real change that we have to address. And we don't have that information right now, it's my understanding, obviously.
That is going to be one of the next steps on our end, in which for every little big piece and every little tiny piece of wetland that is going to be preserved, we have to provide a meets and bound description for all of those wetlands. And that would be tied together with the updated deed restrictions. That to do that, the next step would be is we would have to get an involvement with a surveyor. The surveyor that we utilize would certainly be the choice of the IDA. Historically, we have used Van Duzen and Steves. They had done all the meets and bounds descriptions and for the original subdivisions and phases of the subdivision.
Now, didn't we say the tags that, that NCS had placed, they could use those for the meets and bounds?
Yes, we can use those. There are obviously many different sides and angles in what's the word I want to use? Lines that would make it a very irregular shape, is whether or not the IDA wishes to, make some straighter lines and make a perhaps a bit more uniform polygon shape around each one of these wetlands. We certainly can use meets and bounds descriptions from point to point for the wetland flagging that NCES has done. We have the opportunity both ways.
Okay, so we'll work with the surveyor on what would be the best way to accomplish that.
Admittedly, the thought that I had is I was gonna, if we wanted to make the shapes for a meets and bounds description a bit more uniform and simplified, that I could take a stab in making those lines, and then we could offer that to the surveyor to then make a meets and bounds description.
Okay, well, why don't you take a crack at that?
Okay, we can do that. Now, the question that we did have, looking at, looks like lots 24, 23, 22, 21, that's the northeast portion of the property, is whether or not we just wanted to draw a line across somewheres along there and just let that section of the property go.
Yeah, my question on that was, if we take that, I would do a couple things. If we decide to do that, I combine that into one property. But the second thing is that, well, there's not a lot of wetlands up there. Is it possible? I'm afraid to say this. Is it possible to swap that area as preserved land for some of the other lands down here?
Meaning, if we preserve that large area, we then could disturb other wetlands?
We can disturb other wetlands. For example, the place we were talking about doing in 4 and 5 and
If we were to go that route, yes, we would. That's a possibility, but we would be on the hook for expanding and constructing wetlands to compensate for lost wetlands elsewhere on the property.
we'll just take some more skidders in there. We'll take care of that real quick.
Yeah. Well, I think we all realize that that did contribute to some of the additional wetlands in that area.
Yes.
So Bob, that's 1.5 to 1 when you replace.
There's always going to be some kind of additional request. So 1.5 to 1 could be part of that. That I do know, and bear with me, I'm not a wetland biologist, that if it's a higher quality wetland, they could ask for an additional ratio. Maybe it's 1 to 2, 1 to 2.5. That's a possibility. And I would have to have either Steve and George at NCES weigh in on that.
Thank you.
Is it possible to swap that with another location? Say if, Queensberry Park there, it's a lot of wetlands, could they swap that? Like we did for that mitigation area for the airport?
The upland areas in that, I mean, that probably could be marketed as a, this isn't the right term to use, as a wetland bank. That if somebody else in the area wanted to disturb wetlands, that we could do something similar to the airport and what Griffiths did, that they, in which they disturb wetlands, and then on the IDA property, additional wetlands were constructed to compensate.
Okay. That's a possibility, but for us, and the value of that land, if I remember correctly, the appraisal is like $9,000 an acre. To get that ready for mitigation, wetlands approval and permitting,
Not worth the money.
there's no return. So my recommendation to the board is just make that preserved area, however we want to term it, consolidate in one lot, and just say, forget it. If the next door neighbor wants it, we'll sell it to him for $1. But there was some mention of one of the neighbors wanted that land and he wanted it for hunting and to protect his property from people coming over into his property. And so it's sort of a buffer. Anyone else got any questions on that?
Just a comment. If I would open up that it might be more than $1 to sell it. That's all I would say, is put that out there.
Well,
Thank you.
we won't have to pay taxes on it.
What if,
So we would do a conservation easement on that, designated as forever wetlands, is that the plan?
Is that your recommendation, Bob, or?
If we did that, yes, any and all of that property would be preserved as for no development or disturbance of wetlands going forward. One thought is, if you did not wish to just whack off that whole northeast corner and preserve everything, that if we kind of carved around some of those wetlands, if there ever was a desire in the future for a future project elsewhere, that could be an area for mitigation if that opportunity were to ever arise. If you think it's more beneficial for the IDA to divest that portion of the property, that's going to be a choice for the board.
Save money, tax money.
Well, I was gonna say, what's it cost us?
That's, what is it?
It costs us sewer and water every year. Sewer is like $400 a year and water is like, I can't remember. I just
2 or
can't
3.
remember. 200 or 300,
Yeah. So 700
per lot.
per lot.
Right.
And how many lots? 5?
There's 5 lots.
But if we designate it as one lot,
We're gonna pay less.
We still gotta pay the money.
If we get it as, I think if we can get it as conservation, I think it becomes,
It's undevelopable at that point.
right, it's taken off water and sewer, so you don't pay any taxes on it,
And we
at
could,
least special district, and we do also have special district taxes.
I like what Bob said too, is I like having that bank under us. If we're not paying taxes, we're preserving it as, then we have acreage there to, if we are gonna drain anything else.
we don't have to do it, somebody coming in may want the land to swap, and they could pay for the costs associated with swapping the wetlands out.
Right.
Correct.
So we keep it.
Designated as one lot.
Yeah.
if we're going to combine 4 and 5, what if we just took the property line from Queensbury Ave, County Line Road, headed directly east, all the way up to,
Is that Precision?
the built lot? Yeah, what building is that?
I think that's Precision.
6.
Precision.
I think it is too.
Precision.
Precision,
Okay.
yeah.
And do like a boundary line adjustment, let's say, and turn the northern section of that lot into wetland. And then your buildable lot is going to have a lot of buildable space on it. You remove the interior
Don't forget, though,
That's-
this gives you green
that's-
space too, though.
That's all wetland.
It gives you wetlands is green space also, so you don't want to just throw it away. You may need that to get a larger building on that
See,
particular
wetland,
lot.
you're going to
Yes.
see some
Yes.
shading in here. That's also wetland. That's wetland
Okay.
right there.
I'm not seeing it in here.
No, here's a wetland, here's the wetland boundary right here. The light gray shaded area. This,
Oh.
then the light gray shaded area.
Okay, what if we just extended a line like that? This goes over into the wetland bank for us, and then this is a saleable lot and all that.
I was just gonna sell 4 and 5 together.
Yeah,
I didn't know if it would be advantageous for the IDA to retain a half acre of wetland that's already part of wetland and turn that
you got
into.
all this.
Did you hear that question, Bob?
I did. I mean, I'm not sure there's a whole lot of advantage of the IDA keeping even that section of wetland. Maybe no, wetland doesn't have much marketability. Let somebody else pay the taxes on it.
Would it be of any utility for us to have it to offset any other development?
We only have 2 small islands of upland in that area. I do not see that as a marketable space for a future wetland bank. It's just hard to access. We would then have to, in order to construct wetland in there, we would have to disturb existing wetland to get to it.
It just strikes me, since I've been here for 1,000 years, that we've been talking about this for 1,000 years. Do what's best for us and move on.
Okay, so if we go back to 34, 34 is almost all wetlands. Correct, Bob? Correct, Bob?
That is correct. That is correct.
35 has very little marketable space,
Okay, here,
very little uplands.
help us
Thir-
out.
35, we don't have a 35.
Okay, 33.
Okay.
He's on the right corner.
So
It's right on the corner.
The other
After-
side,
Do you want to
after
share?
Roselle.
right here, right
Do
here.
you want to share?
No, I'm taking notes on
Are you
that.
sure?
Yeah.
Here's my map. My pleasure.
34 and 33. This, just lean over, you don't mind doing it other times. 34 and 33.
Yeah,
34 is completely, no one's gonna wanna buy that.
Which one?
It's a very small area. You're correct.
The one right after Roselle. Here's Roselle right here. We're talking about
Oh, you're
34,
talking- you're down here.
33 and 34.
Okay, we were looking here.
Those are the two.
do you think,
Those are
Ro-
33.
what about Roselle buying it?
34.
This is 4 and 5.
No.
County Line Road, Casey Road.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
30,
Your two maps are
34,
different ways.
35 and 34.
35,
It's actually 34 and
34.
33 are the new numbers.
That would be 33 and 34.
This is 30?
That's 30 and 31 right there. 30 and 31.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Okay, hang on. Got it?
So you've got your map a different way than they do. That's where the problem's starting
Yeah.
here.
Okay, okay.
So I think 30,
So 34 is right behind Roselle's.
correct.
How's that look?
That's very little wetland, very little upland on that, isn't there? Bob?
Correct. That is correct.
33,
You've got a little, maybe a little bit more upland in that area, but it's an irregular shaped upland.
So should that be 1?
It could certainly be marketed as 1.
Just like we're doing on board, but.
Yeah.
34, right.
I'd like to get the acreage on that because it's less than an acre, wouldn't it be worth it?
Well, I don't know if I can quickly give that to you, but let me give that a try.
Don't do it quickly now, but if there's not usable land there, upland there, I would just like to get to the point, make a decision, we just combine those 2 lots and combine it with the migration or mitigation area. The next lot up at 32, how's that one look for you upland area?
I mean, that still has a fair amount of upland area there that I certainly could see that marketable.
Okay. Then we talked about 31 and 30.
Correct.
And we were talking about putting a culvert across that to access.
Yes.
Yes.
And when we do a culvert, it can't be just a small culvert that would sit in the wetlands. We're talking about like a, a flat, like arch culvert that would span the full width of each of those wetland crossings. Because if we do it that way, that would not trigger an individual permit.
Okay. So then 30, 29 and 28, is there much upland area in those? I don't see much there.
29 especially, there's very little except for right out at the frontage of on Ferguson Lane.
Then 27 and 28 be the same purpose, combine them together,
Market them together.
28 and 27.
So here's 28,
27.
there's 28, 30, 29, 28, 27.
Oh, wait a minute.
Before the ban.
No, you're all off, remember, you're all off one number on these,
I'm going by what you're saying.
but these numbers aren't right. It's an old map, these beautiful, was renumbered since then. So that's 30 and 31, 29, 29. This has got the right number there. If you can read it. So we know that's 31, we know that's 30, 29, 28, 27. So we're talking about 20, 29 and 28, aren't we? That's 27.
This is 27. All right. Got that.
It's 29 and 20, the other two. So 28 and 27, we have to mark it together because there's not much uplands there. See,
Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
26 is not usable.
But if you combine the three of them, some of this land could be, depending on how they configure the building.
There's nothing there, that's all wetlands. You can't see if there's white gray, that means it's all wetlands. All the way down, just.
So this
no-
one here, that's
no
in the
usable
wetlands
right there,
too.
right?
Yeah,
But then these two lots on the corner, they're uplands, so we can sell those. So that, those together, that one and that one, not together, but separately. For those two. Then these are the ones that are looking to go into,
the other thing I see, that's not that small. And you try to maintain the green space to develop land ratio. Sometimes combining something with wetlands
Mhm.
makes sense because this is your green space.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, it doesn't cost us anything. Matter of fact, every time we merge lots, it's less sewer and water. Is that true?
that's correct.
So that would be a good idea to merge maybe these three together.
Mhm.
And then whatever upland is here, you can just about use all of it because this is your green space.
Okay. Good. So I think. we
Which
covered
three
all-
lots you talking about marketing together?
27
One,
through
two,
29.
three. These three.
27 through 29. Okay.
Numbers in that map.
Question mark on that though, Bob.
That's what-
Okay.
Is it? Yeah,
27,
it is
28,
27 through 29, Bob.
Right.
Okay.
The back. Yeah, when you're looking.
We'll make it really bad.
You got a map going.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. That's good money. Good.
Anything else we had outstanding on that?
I think that pretty well covers what we have. One item that I would like to touch on though, Dave, and to make sure the IDA does not find themselves in a similar situation going forward. Please remember that the wetland delineations that were completed in late 2020 and early 2021 are only good for 5 years with as far as the Army Corps of Engineers goes. That if lots are not marketed until after that period of time and no work has occurred on these lots, that there is always a potential that the wetlands can expand.
Yep.
If we wish to try to kind of freeze the upland areas in place going forward, and I'm thinking along the lines of 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34, if there's a strong desire to make sure that upland area remains, that there may wish to be a consideration of filling some of that area to raise it up to make sure it doesn't become wetland in the future. If you find, if you think there's marketability within the next 2 to 3 years, that you could leave that to a future buyer and developer, that's an option. But if it goes beyond that, there's some risk, I believe, of losing some additional land.
So what do we do? Put the clean fill wanted signs in those areas? Seriously?
Did you ever look at?
Yeah,
that-
I mean,
Did you ever look
I
at that
did.
field down in the dewatering facility, Bob?
well, yeah, I know you had mentioned that before. I mean, as long as it's clean fill that can be utilized, yes, that's certainly a potential.
Okay.
I know, Dave, I think you mentioned there's several thousand yards of material available.
34,000 cubic yards.
Okay, more than a few then.
Good place. I was thinking about see if we get BOCES for training purposes. Load their trucks and truck it.
Perfect. Win-win.
Yep. Okay. So.
I mean,
let's go-
obviously to move that, there certainly would be some expense on the part of the IDA that you would have to front for these lots if we take that approach.
Okay. They were actually talking about see if we can get BOCES to do training exercises and bring that land in. Bring that
Maybe
land.
there's some opportunity there. Okay, understood.
Okay, good.
And the only reason I bring that up is those lots that I just mentioned, that area is very flat. And it's not going to be hard for those wetland boundaries to migrate.
Mhm.
You understand it's the plants, that's how they determine it. So if the plants move up, then that's wetlands.
It's more than just planting or vegetation that you see at the service. It's also what they consider hydric soils, that they're literally going in and taking core samples along the way. That's also another part of the wetland. The definition of a wetland is truly hydric soils, meaning that it's got a lot of water in it.
Well, let's set up a meeting with Steve and NCS. And go
Okay.
find out what their recommendations are.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Bob?
I believe that's what I have on my items to cover.
Okay. Any other questions for Bob?
I do. Bob, when we have a month like July where we have so much rain, if they're doing core samples shortly after a month like that, does that impact it at all?
Generally not. Hydric soils will develop over a period of time. If we have prolonged periods of rain that occur for the next several years, yes, that could cause that to change. But this year, I just think we've been cold and wet. I don't see that having a vast impact currently. But also remember that we kind of have the upland areas that have been the wetland areas that have been delineated are in essence kind of locked in time for the next 4.5 years from now.
Okay. Is that when he issues the JD or from the time the delineation was completed?
I believe it's from the time of the delineation is completed, but we can verify that with John Connell.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you very much, Bob.
Okay, thank you. My apologies for jumping on late.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right, very good.
We talked about getting a resolution ready for logging restriction on the industrial park, especially that back area. Can we prepare some resolution that says IDA will not log that property without consulting with John Connell or NCS, just this back acreage here? Those back lots that we're talking about.
Mhm.
that he recommended we not log those at all. He said that's what did the problem, damage was that they got logging done in there.
There's not much left to be logged back there.
They grow over time.
Okay.
Remember, timber is like that big around now.
What is?
Timber is
Timber,
that big around.
the new,
Okay,
appellate division.
okay.
So that was a request from Army Corps.
Well, he pointed us right in that direction. I think he'd like more than a resolution, but that's all we can do. Just to make sure future people know they can't do it. Executive Director report. Mike?
Good morning, everyone. Continuing to reach out to different local entities in both counties, including businesses, elected officials, the real estate industry, lawyers. I'll certainly get to the list that you sent me, Mike. Thank you. I just finished up the Greenwich Chamber. What else? Let's see. Yesterday did a walkthrough over at Birch Bottling just to introduce myself there. They're talking about possibly doing some expansion, so that might be a future project. And just continue to reach out. I am away on vacation next week, but certainly available if anybody needs to reach me on my cell phone or on my personal email. That's all I have.
Which bottom missed the opportunity when they came in, we contacted them, and they never got back to us before they put their own gym.
Yeah, I know.
He seemed pretty positive when we were over there talking about various options. I emailed him back just to thank him yesterday afternoon, and I think he definitely wants to sit down once they have their ducks lined up. So I think it's definitely moving in the right direction, at least after an initial meeting.
They're putting, talking about 65 to 100,000 square foot addition. So even the numbers, I think that's like just in the building itself is 10 million.
Now, hadn't they just expanded some?
No,
They moved.
Who's this?
Birch Bottling.
They moved from, I think it's Waterford.
Waterford.
They moved up here.
Mhm.
It's a really impressive operation they have going over there right now. And he showed us the areas that they're back behind the current building. There's a parking lot and then woods that they are looking to expand into.
Any other questions for Mike?
I've got another lead, 2 leads for you.
Great. Definitely send them. Thank you.
Adirondack Winery, we need a resolution for the next meeting on expanding their sales tax.
It is likely just going to be an extension. Their project costs have increased, but they don't think their sales tax estimate did. But their sales tax needs to be extended out through April of 2022.
Okay.
Because it was a 6 month, how much do they usually have?
We did it in accordance with our approval resolution, which had them completing their project by August 1st.
Okay.
But we just closed on their loan last week, so, yeah, so they obviously aren't on the schedule they were previously thought they would be on. But they should be off and running now because,
We'll have that resolution or resolutions ready for us. at the
yeah,
meeting.
for August.
Any other business come before the IDA exec meeting?
What's that?
Any other business? Yes.
I just want to say this, I have been around a long time, for a good bit. It bothers me that we're trying to sell lots in this park. And we're listening to a lot of, I believe this, I believe that, I believe this, I believe that. We need to come to a point where we know exactly what we could sell. Because if there's 4 or 5 years, it might be 4 or 5 years. Well, yes, but if we start now, it might take 4 or 5 years to get things done. And by that time, things have changed. What do we have now and how can we sell it? How can you do his work?
What we had a year ago is much different than what we have today.
Yes, it is.
We're still working through the delineation. So we got an idea what we're doing, what we can sell, but until Army Corps of Engineers finishes up this delineation, we're not sure what he's gonna find or what he's gonna sell. We do know the upland areas we can sell. We can sell 3, we can sell 4 and 5 combined. We can sell 7. We can sell the ones around the bend. The ones that
Kilcoin.
Kilcoin is looking at. We can sell, there's 3 across the aisle there. We can sell that 30, whatever it is. 33, 32, 31. We can sell that.
Then let's let the world know. Let's let the world know. I'm here because of a big sign. And as far as the Corps of Engineers are concerned, can we sit down with them and say, look?
We have been.
Oh, you have?
We've been working for 7 months with them already.
I mean, you can't get the definitive answer.
It took 3 months to get an answer on our deed restrictions you got to put in place.
They move rather slow.
Yeah,
I mean,
but let's not deal with the code, let's deal with the others.
so we'll see. Anything else?
We've been talking about it for about 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well,
Just looking at this map, there's lots that have been sold but not built on, and the other phase,
Yes.
phase 1. What's the story with that?
They were sold early in progress to people
Who could?
basically thought they might build. It's speculative, some of them, I think some of them were speculative,
Mhm.
unfortunately, and
Yeah.
they're just sitting on it,
Okay.
you know.
that's exactly right. In this second phase, we have restrictions that if they don't use a property, develop a property, or start a project within a year or 2 years, I don't remember what it is. What it is, they have to sell it back to the IDA.
Right. That's-
We didn't
should
have
been
those
done to begin with.
restrictions in phase 1.
Exactly.
That's the other problem with phase 1 is there was no deed restrictions, no covenants on what they could and couldn't do. So it puts us in a bind, created some problems, so we'll see. Okay, then I'll adjourn the executive park meeting and we'll go into CDC. Mr. Leggett, Mr. Biddle,
Yes.
Mr. Grasso's here, Mary King is here, Nick Camino's here, Dave O'Brien's here, Carol Elias, and Michael Stander. Okay, we got that. I need approval of the June 2nd minutes for the CDC Industrial Park.
Moved.
You can't.
Okay.
That's the
Okay.
Three of us.
Leggett, him, or him. Leggett makes the motion,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Biddle. Okay, any further omissions, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
It looks like Highland Meadows is gonna close hopefully this Friday. Was the last target date I heard. It may
Possibly.
change after tomorrow, but I'm still sick and tired of red lines coming back and forth. Too many attorneys involved. So anyhow, we'll have probably, I don't know, I think the fee was like 170.
They haven't finalized their number yet, so I
Yeah,
can't
but
calculate that.
it's in that range, isn't it?
I think it's in that range, yeah. But there's several different numbers flying around right now,
For
so,
what they're bonding?
yeah. It should be finalized today. We have another conference call tomorrow. We have a conference call about every 3 days
Mhm.
about the status. There's just there's 2 banks involved and several companies, and then every one of the companies has their own counsel.
And a new one chimed in yesterday.
Yeah, new one chimed in yesterday, so.
And so where does that all fall into the bonding? That they all need to come to agreement on
On the documents, yeah.
the documents, but, and the amount?
The amount is being worked out because certain items are eligible for tax exempt financing and certain aren't. So what they're doing is they're going through the purchase, what the monies are going to be used for, coordinating that with Joe Scott's office and his tax department to make those determinations. So I can't remember, the most recent number was yesterday. And that was yesterday, Tuesday. And this is, I think yesterday was Tuesday, where is this?
How the weeks go by.
It was just yesterday. I don't know why it's so hard to find. All right, let me see.
Well, the original number is 28 million.
Yeah, yesterday was,
Is it going up?
no. Oh my gosh. I hate this new thing. I don't like the search on it. What in the heck?
I think we're good. It's gonna be between $1 and $3 billion. I'm good with that range.
Yeah.
Where is this
we're
email?
No way to do it.
It's probably gonna be between $150 and 200, I would think.
The number is just escaping me when I read it in his email.
Not a,
We started out at 28.
yeah.
Okay.
So either way.
It's about 130, 140.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in that. I'll get the,
Awesome.
It's gonna change today anyways. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
Just send us when it's final today.
yeah, so once I have that, I'll finalize the statement, get that over to them and finalize our opinion and get that over to them.
Awesome.
And then when all that paperwork happens, they write a check and it goes into our bank.
Yeah, actually, they do everything by wire for this transaction, so there's not gonna be an actual closing. That's why it's possible we do close this Friday. Because everybody's signature pages are already together at one location, but the final documents are being addressed. The one big thing is insurance, that they have to provide proof of insurance, and there's like a significant approval process for them to get the insurance certificates issued. And yeah, everybody has to sign off on it, the language, there can't be any conflicting language in any of the documents. They're trying to go back through and make sure every insurance provision in all of the documents are all having the same language. Their insurance company won't sign off on it. So that's really what the holdup has been the last couple of conference calls.
Anything else?
So,
Do you know the name of the insurance company? Just out of curiosity.
I don't, because we haven't.
Because this sounds ridiculous, to be honest with you. I do this all day long. I do this all day long. It's ridiculous.
well, I think the lawyers just go milking this for their fees.
What do we got next?
So anyhow, we did move in the new office. We got new office furniture. I was suggesting that we, office furniture is like $2,500.
Mhm.
I was suggesting we pay that out of CDC if that's permissible. They never pay for anything else. I'm waiting for council to respond.
That's fine. We'll do that short-term lease I was telling you about to occupy the space.
Okay.
Not short-term lease, short lease.
Well, is that the easy way to do it? Or we talked about doing a grant, moving the money from,
Well, that's what you're definitely gonna do that, right? Because that's gonna be a large sum of money. So we're definitely gonna do that once the monies from the Glen closing come in.
okay, so.
That was approved, well, that looks like it was discussed at the last,
It was.
yeah, that we would do that once.
Well, then we just better just to pay it out of the IDA and get the money from,
That's up to you.
let's wait, I'll pay it out of the IDA and then we'll get the money on grant over. You're gonna start that paperwork?
Do you want to do it right away? In June, you said you decided to do it at the end of the year. Or do you want to do it sooner than that? I mean, who knows at this point, it could be the end of the year. but-
Is this for the funding of the CDC?
Right.
from the IDA?
Yeah,
We were gonna leave 25 or 50 in there?
Was it 25?
well,
25?
by the August meeting, I should know, we should be closed by the August meeting for sure.
Mhm.
And then you'll know the exact amount and then.
Okay. Okay, good, thank you.
So CDC can have assets like office furniture.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Then we'll adjourn that meeting and turn off everything here, excuse me. End.